It started with a message that no one expected to become a warning, a simple post written by a young woman sitting alone in a small apartment on a quiet Wednesday night. Her name was Mariella. She was 25, a digital illustrator who spent most evenings drawing soft landscapes and answering messages from anxious strangers online. Her post was short, almost too short for the fear behind it. Does anyone know what to do when someone keeps watching your apartment? There was no detail, no name, just a trembling uncertainty between her words. Most people replied with casual advice: close your curtains, call security, maybe it's nothing. Only a few noticed the hush of desperation. None of them knew that the men she was referring to had already entered her building an hour before. Mariella lived on the third floor of a worn but peaceful residential block above a closed pharmacy. She had moved there to find a quiet place to work, far from the crowded neighborhood where she grew up. Her closest friend, Kemi, described her as gentle and careful, someone who worried about everyone but rarely asked for help herself. She had been uneasy for weeks, hinting that a strange man kept appearing in places he shouldn't be. At first, she laughed it off. Then she blocked him online. But blocking him didn't stop him. It only made him silent. The man's name was Nathan, a 32-year-old delivery rider with an unstable work pattern and a habit of observing people more than speaking to them. Neighbors rarely remembered his face except for one detail: he walked fast, always looking like he was late for something. In truth, he had all the time in the world. And most of that time was spent watching Mariella from a distance she didn't notice at first. He memorized her routine: when she bought groceries, when she took the bus, when her lights went off, when she posted online. No one knew him well enough to notice what he was becoming. On the night everything changed, Mariella came home earlier than usual. It was just after 8 p.m. She locked her door twice, something she never used to do, and sent a voice note to Kemi. Her tone was anxious but steady. "I think he followed me again, from the bus stop. I don't know what to do." Kemi told her to call the police immediately. Mariella said she would, right after calming down. She made tea, opened her laptop, and posted the message that would later become her last public plea. While she typed, Nathan was already inside the building. A resident with grocery bags had unknowingly let him in when the automatic door failed to close fast enough. CCTV caught him entering quietly, hands in pockets, head lowered. Investigators would later remark on how familiar he seemed with the layout. He avoided the elevator, choosing the stairs instead, stepping lightly, pausing at each landing as if listening for something. He knew her floor. He had been there before. At 8:27 p.m., he reached her hallway. The corridor light flickered, and the camera angle was poor, but the footage showed him standing near her door for almost a minute, unmoving. When a door at the far end opened, he slipped behind a corner, avoiding detection with practiced ease. Inside, Mariella continued answering messages from strangers who didn't understand the danger she was sensing outside her door. A few minutes later, she approached her peephole after hearing a faint noise. She waited, expecting to see an empty hallway. What she saw instead was nothing. He had stepped just out of view. That hesitation was all he needed. When she cracked the door open to double-check, his hand pushed it inward with controlled force. She gasped, soft, shocked, and he immediately covered her mouth, whispering, "Don't fight me. Don't scream." It wasn't a threat. It was a statement, calm and cold. Neighbors later told police they heard nothing. He led her from the apartment with alarming precision, holding her arm tightly but moving with the casual posture of someone escorting a friend. Down the stairwell, through the side exit where the sensor lights barely worked, and into the narrow alley behind the building. A man walked by on the main road only a few seconds after they disappeared into the shadows. He didn't look. He didn't hear a thing. Mariella tried to speak once, just one trembling plea, but he tightened his grip and whispered again, "Keep walking." She looked left and right, hoping for an open store, a passing car, anyone. But the street was thinning, and he was guiding her deeper into the quiet. The final stretch was through an old service alley behind an abandoned building. Her breathing turned sharp. She tried to pull back. He pushed her forward. That was the last moment anyone saw her alive. Her disappearance was reported early the next morning when she missed her online meeting and failed to answer Kemi's calls. Police arrived within the hour. Her tea mug was still warm. Her chair was pulled back from the desk. Her last message remained open on the screen. Officers noted the misalignment of her doorframe, subtle but consistent with a forced push. The investigation began immediately. Detectives constructed a timeline from digital activity, neighbor observations, and building CCTV. They confirmed Nathan's entrance into the building at 8:18 p.m. They documented his exit at 9:03 p.m., hood up, steps fast, head turning back once. That small movement would later become a key signal in behavioral analysis. Witness statements were collected. A resident recalled hearing fast footsteps, like someone rushing. A shopkeeper remembered Mariella earlier that evening, saying she looked worried. A taxi driver spotted a man matching Nathan's description walking alone near the abandoned building soon after 9 p.m. Forensics expanded the search radius. Behind the abandoned building, they found disturbed dust patterns, a small scrape on the wall consistent with someone losing balance, and a broken piece of jewelry, a tiny pendant that Kemi confirmed belonged to Mariella. Officers requested cadaver dogs, drones, and ground search units. They interviewed delivery companies, traced digital footprints, and pulled GPS logs from Nathan's delivery app. The logs showed no movement during the crucial time window. His explanation: he told investigators he was on break. But his alibi cracked further when police visited his small rented room. Scratches were visible on his arms. He claimed he fell off his motorbike. Yet under his mattress, detectives found a single item that changed everything: the matching half of the broken pendant. It was enough for a warrant. Enough for an arrest. Enough to shake the room when officers informed Kemi. 5 days after she vanished, a search team discovered Mariella's body in a wooded area outside the city. The medical report showed no graphic trauma but confirmed she died during restraint, overwhelmed by fear and stress. Her final moments were quiet, helpless, terrified. The investigators stood still longer than usual. Even seasoned officers felt the weight. Community reaction intensified quickly. People who replied to her online post felt guilt. Neighbors questioned their own awareness. Strangers began sharing her story with the painful realization that she had tried to reach out, and yet no one saw the depth of her fear until it was too late. When the case reached court, the hall was full. Journalists lined the walls. People who never met Mariella sat silently through each session because her story had gripped the community in a way few cases had. Nathan sat emotionless, answering questions with flat denial until confronted with the pendant, the CCTV, the GPS logs, the inconsistent statements. The prosecution laid out the timeline with striking clarity. The defense argued stress, confusion, misidentification. But the evidence stood firm. When the verdict was read, guilty, the room breathed out together. Kemi cried quietly. Nathan looked straight ahead, no change in expression. The judge described the crime as a failure of human empathy, attention, and restraint. After the sentencing, Mariella's mother said only one line: she asked for help, and the world was too slow. The case officially closed 6 months later. But something remained unsettled. Because while investigators felt confident in the sequence of events, one detail continued to disturb them: the CCTV camera facing the alley behind the abandoned building showed something unusual that night. A second shadow. A second set of footsteps. Someone else standing just out of frame for 12 whole seconds, watching. A detail police overlooked at first. A detail that didn't match Nathan's description. A detail that suggested he might not have been alone. And that is where the real story begins. The second shadow on the CCTV changed everything. Investigators had believed the case was solved, closed, completed. Nathan was in custody, the evidence was overwhelming, the verdict already delivered. But when analysts revisited the footage for archival review, they saw it: a still figure standing behind the dumpster, partly shielded by broken metal sheets, watching the alley at the exact moment Nathan led Mariella out of sight. The shadow was taller, broader, and remained completely motionless, as if waiting, not hiding. Detectives paused the footage again and again. The shape didn't belong to Nathan. And it wasn't Mariella. It was someone else. Someone who stayed until the moment the alley went dark, then disappeared a few seconds later through an exit police never searched. That discovery reopened the investigation instantly. Detectives called it the silent figure. No face. No confirmed identity. but the angle of the shoulders and the stillness suggested experience, someone comfortable standing in darkness, someone trained or unusually controlled. Police expanded the search radius, pulling footage from nearby shops, street corners, and passing buses. On one camera facing the crossroad, they found a faint outline of a person in a dark hoodie moving calmly toward a secondary road, not following Nathan, not running, just walking away as if their purpose was completed. Digital enhancement revealed one critical detail: the silent figure carried something in their hand, a slender object reflecting light for just half a second. It wasn't a phone. It wasn't a weapon. It looked like a key. Detectives reviewed the timeline again. Nathan had entered the building on his own. He moved without checking behind him. His behavior suggested he believed he was acting alone. But after police interrogated him again, he hesitated for the first time when shown the enhanced frame. His reaction was subtle, a tiny tightening of his jaw, a look toward the left corner of the room, but for an experienced investigator, it was enough. They pressed him, calmly, carefully. He denied knowing anyone else. He said he worked alone, that he never met someone that night. Yet when asked why he looked away from the camera during his exit, he grew agitated and asked for water. Detectives noted the shift in posture, shoulders stiff, breathing faster. Something was buried there. Police went back to witness interviews. A homeless man who slept behind the old cinema mentioned hearing two voices around the time Mariella disappeared. He originally thought it was an argument between strangers. His statement hadn't been taken seriously because he was half asleep and inconsistent. Now detectives listened again. He said one voice was calm, almost whispering. The other was frightened. And then he heard footsteps, two different rhythms, on. He assumed it was nothing. Now it sounded like a missing piece. Officers searched the wooded area again where Mariella was found. This time, they brought forensic botanists and soil analysts. A new trace emerged, a small fragment of rubber with a unique tread pattern, different from Nathan's shoes. The fragment was embedded in the soil deeper than Nathan's footprints, suggesting the second person had been there earlier. It meant the silent figure arrived before Nathan brought her there. This changed the entire narrative. Did the second person lure her? Did Nathan meet him there? Or did the silent figure observe everything without ever interfering? Every possibility made the case darker. CCTV from a convenience store 2 blocks away captured a clearer angle of the figure the night before the crime. The height estimation suggested someone between 5 feet 11 inches and 6 feet 2 inches. Clothing was consistent: dark hoodie, dark jeans, unmarked shoes. But one detail stood out. On the left wrist was a reflective band, not from a watch, but from a wrist brace commonly used by warehouse workers or heavy lifting staff. Detectives began checking employment records in a 3-kilometer radius. 26 names matched. 7 had left the job recently. 1 resigned the very morning after Mariella disappeared. His name was Jordan Kloss. Jordan was 28, quiet, rarely spoke to co-workers, and lived in a rented room with Northwest-known close friends. His landlord described him as polite but distant. He had a small scar on his left wrist, covered with the brace seen in the footage. Police went to his address. He was gone. The room was empty except for a suitcase missing, clothes missing, and one odd item left behind, a small notebook with thin indented marks, like someone had written on the previous pages and torn them out. Under forensic light, fragments of impressions were recovered. 3 sentences were partially legible: "She keeps looking back, not yet," and "Tonight we move." Those sentences aligned disturbingly with the night Mariella vanished. A nationwide alert was issued. At the same time, detectives checked phone tower data near Mariella's building and discovered an unidentified device that pinged near her street for 3 nights before the crime, always around the same time. The device belonged to a prepaid phone purchased with cash. But triangulation placed it near Jordan's workplace earlier that same week. Investigators concluded that he had been tracking her movements independently, possibly even before Nathan. This raised the most chilling question of all: were the 2 men connected? Or had Mariella become the target of 2 separate predators without knowing it? The possibility sounded impossible, statistically tiny, almost unreal. Yet the evidence pulled investigators toward the same unsettling conclusion: Jordan was present in that alley, watching Nathan take her. And he did nothing. Not to stop it. Not to join. He only watched. Then he walked away. Search teams extended to bus stations, train terminals, border checkpoints. Jordan wasn't on camera anywhere. But detectives knew he had a wrist injury, and pharmacies typically sold the type of brace he wore. Officers contacted 40 pharmacies across the region. On the 12th call, a pharmacist confirmed selling a wrist brace to a man matching Jordan's description 3 days before the crime. He bought something else too, skin-colored gloves. That detail tightened the investigation significantly. Gloves meant preparation. Gloves meant intent. Gloves meant he expected to touch something, or someone, without leaving prints. Finally, one small but powerful clue emerged from a transport card registered under an alias that matched Jordan's handwriting style. He had boarded a bus heading to a coastal town 2 hours away the morning after Mariella disappeared. Police rushed there. They searched abandoned shacks, and used storage units, beach motels. At last, a caretaker at an old fishing lodge remembered a man renting a small cabin for one night, paying in cash, leaving before dawn. The caretaker recalled him clearly because he asked too many questions about remote fishing spots, and whether any unused pathways led into the forest. On the table inside that cabin, investigators found a burned pile of papers. Beside it, a single melted plastic remnant with enough pattern to identify it as part of a prepaid phone. Jordan had destroyed his device. But the most disturbing discovery was made in a trash container near the cabin: a small roll of duct tape, a torn piece of fabric containing Mariella's perfume scent, and a strip of plastic with Nathan's fingerprint. It connected them both to the same object. To the same moment. To the same crime scene. This meant Jordan had not only been present, he had handled something linked to her. The investigators froze. This changed the motive entirely. It connected the two men in a way no one expected. Detectives prepared an arrest warrant listing Jordan as a second suspect in Mariella's kidnapping and death. The prosecutor called it a hunt for the missing half of a violent puzzle. But Jordan remained missing. Until 3 weeks later. A ranger reported seeing a man camping deep inside the coastal forest, living off canned food and disappearing whenever anyone approached. Tracks led to a hidden tent. Inside, officers found maps of Mariella's neighborhood, scribbled notes about her routines, and disturbing drawings of her apartment building. Jordan had been watching her far longer than Nathan had. But even more shocking was a photograph found among his belongings: Nathan, walking near a bus stop, unaware he was being followed. The truth struck investigators immediately: Jordan had been watching Nathan too. This wasn't two predators acting separately. It was something far more calculated. Jordan was tracking Nathan. Nathan was tracking Mariella. And Mariella was trying to warn the world. But it wasn't until the very last page of Jordan's notebook, half-burned, barely legible, that detectives realized the most terrifying possibility of all. The final words were faint, written in shaky ink. He thinks he chose her. He didn't. I did. And then, below it, one more chilling line. He wasn't the only one I was watching. It wasn't clear who that last line referred to. Not until investigators noticed something else on the final page, something they had missed at first glance. A name. Juan. The name written at the bottom of Jordan's final notebook page changed the direction of the entire investigation. It was not Mariella's name. It was not Nathan's. It was not anyone connected to the case so far. It was Juan. Detectives checked every record from Mariella's university, her workplace, her online messages, and her neighborhood. No one named Juan appeared in her life. Then investigators checked Nathan's background again. Still nothing. But when they searched deeper into Jordan's history, the missing link appeared. 2 years earlier, Jordan had lived in another city for 6 months. During that time, a young woman named Juan Simon had reported feeling followed by a stranger she could never identify. She had posted online about seeing the same figure near a bus stop, outside her workplace, and once near her apartment door. Her case never moved forward because she vanished 2 days later. Her disappearance remained unsolved. She was 24. And the description she gave in her final reports matched Jordan perfectly. The investigators understood now that Mariella was not his first target. She was the second. And the reason he studied Nathan so closely became clearer. Jordan used men who showed signs of instability, loneliness, and anger, men who could be influenced, manipulated, and guided into committing acts he designed. He stayed in the shadows, remaining unseen, letting someone else take the risk. That was his pattern. He had learned from the first case. And Mariella had walked directly into the second. Detectives confronted Jordan after his arrest in the forest. He sat quietly, hands in front of him, eyes fixed on the table. When they mentioned Juan's name, he blinked once, slowly, the only reaction he gave during the entire interview. They asked him why her name was written in his notebook. He said nothing. They asked him if he followed her. He kept still. They asked him if he watched Nathan the same way he watched another man in the first case. He did not move. Only when investigators slid a photo of Juan across the table did he speak, his voice calm and controlled. He said, "The world forgets people like her." Then he looked up and added, "Just like they forgot Mariella." Detectives realized he saw himself as someone who controlled outcomes, someone who believed fear was a predictable tool, someone who believed he was smarter than the world searching for him. But the evidence gathered from his campsite told the truth: maps, old bus tickets, sketches of streets from other cities, and a timeline that connected Juan's disappearance to the same behavioral patterns used on Mariella. It proved that Jordan had practiced his method before. He watched. He waited. He selected targets. Then he watched someone else fall into his design. The prosecution assembled a full case. For the first time, both investigations, Juan's disappearance and Mariella's death, were linked. Nathan, under new evaluation, gave a long statement. He admitted following Mariella but insisted he had never met Jordan. Evidence supported that. Nathan had been a tool, not a partner. A man pulled into the web of someone he never knew existed. In court, Jordan remained composed, answering questions only when necessary, often correcting small details as if accuracy mattered more than morality. The courtroom was completely silent when prosecutors presented the final notebook page and the faint words that connected both crimes. Families of both victims sat together, realizing their daughters had been chosen not by chance but by the same men who preferred to operate from darkness. Forensic analysts testified that the rubber fragment found at the forest matched Jordan's shoes. Soil samples from his tent matched particles found near Mariella's resting place. The duct tape recovered near the cabin carried trace elements identical to tape found in Jordan's old apartment. And handwriting experts confirmed the notes from both cases came from the same hand. The jury reached their decision without hesitation. Jordan Klaas was found guilty of murder, kidnapping, coercive manipulation, stalking, and the calculated orchestration of violent acts. He received life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Nathan's sentence was adjusted, acknowledging the manipulation he had suffered, but he remained responsible for his actions and received a long-term sentence with mandatory psychiatric treatment. After the verdict, investigators reopened old missing person files in regions where Jordan had previously lived. They found no direct links, but the review brought unresolved cases new attention. Mariella's family attended every session. Juan's relatives traveled from another city to stand beside them. Together, they created a support initiative focused on early reporting of stalking signs, named The Signal Line, inspired by the two women who tried to warn the world but were not heard in time. In the final written summary of the case, the lead detective wrote, "Mariella reached out for help. Juan tried to speak out too. Their silence was not a failure on their part but a failure around them. Their voices now guide the system they could not rely on." And that closed the case. Fully, finally, and forever.